Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Grayson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's been a lot of discussion today about how we should deal with systemic risk in the future. I'm concerned about how we're dealing with it now. What I'm seeing is a massive transfer of wealth from the taxpayers to the banks in the name of systemic risk. And I'm concerned about that. Can you tell me if there's any response to a threat to the system, a systemic risk that does not involve the transfer of hundreds of billions of dollars out of the taxpayer's pocket to the banks? Let's start with Mr. Ryan.
I don't know where you're really going with your question, so I'm just going to give you my answer. We in our industry are we're in a very tough situation. I think that government at all levels has done an excellent job on balance with no real playbook, and quite frankly, most of the regulators with inadequate information. And in order to keep this system stable, the government needed and did make funds available to core financial institutions, and they're essential to our economic health. So I'm very pleased they've done it. What we're talking about here is how do we make sure in the future that we have the ability to look over the horizon and to make some decisions to limit the possibility that we run into this situation again.
Mr. Ryan, I understand that many people seem to regard the fact that we've already taken trillions of dollars and made them available to certain financial institutions who have failed to be a sort of a happy coincidence that we're bailing these people out for the good of the country. I understand that that's the view of many, but I'm wondering if there's any other way to do it. That's my question. Is there another way to deal with a systemic risk problem that does not involve the transfer of funds from the government, from the taxpayers, to private entities? In other words, Wall Street socialism. Let's try Mr. Bartlett.
There's one way, and that is for this committee and the Congress to pass systemic risk legislation and provide for a statutory authority to regulate systemic risk. As far as the current crisis, we are in a crisis. The financial services industry is largely illiquid, has a crisis, and is and that crisis then has then spread to the rest of the economy, whether it's through foreclosures or unemployment. And so the government has taken a number of actions that are costly. TARP, TALF, the new toxic assets thing, the money market guarantees, FDIC guarantees, in order to stabilize the system so that the economy can recover. For the economy to recover, the recovery starts with the financial institutions and the financial services industry, or it doesn't recover, and that's why this Congress is authorized, and the regulatory agencies have taken steps to stabilize the situation.
Right, but what people are sensing is the idea that they're not getting anything in return. They're being threatened with this idea that the financial system will collapse, or it is collapsing, and therefore money has to be taken from the taxpayers and given to the financial system basically in return for nothing. And what I'm asking is there an alternative to that? Because frankly, a lot of people are beginning to see it as extortion. Let's try Ms. Williams.
I would say that part of this has to do with the investment that's being made. And I think it's important to look at this in terms of an investment. And in particular, if you look at TARP and the Capital Purchase Program, the government has made an investment. Now, we have yet to see what the return will be on that investment, but that was the approach that was taken.
Now, when we talk about systemic risk, it seems that we're always talking about letting people off the hook for the mistakes that they made in the past. And it seems to me that that's the opposite of another concept that we've tried to preserve here in Congress, which is moral hazard. Is there a way to deal with systemic risk that does not involve compromising on moral hazard? Dr. Vaughn?
Others have mentioned this issue about creating a systemic risk regulator and then publicly branding institutions and saying, here, this company, this is systemically risky, and therefore does that create an impression of too big to fail? I do think that's a risk. I really think that's a risk. I don't know how that deals with it. I've talked to a lot of people, and I've had some people say to me, look, the horse is already out of the barn. and you can't get it back in. I am equally outraged. I'm a taxpayer, and I am outraged at what's going on, this sort of heads I win, tails you lose that we seem to have evolved to in the last decade. And you know what? I'm not a bank regulator. I'm an insurance regulator, so I can't tell you how to fix the problem. But boy, I would sure like to find a way so it doesn't happen again. I'm with you on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My time is up.
Thank you very much.